The more things change, the more things stay the same. And there's people who also say that history has a tendency to repeat itself. I don't know about repeating, but rhyming makes a lot of sense to me. In this video, I'm going to be comparing the 1930s depression with the current depression that has just started a little while ago, or is about to start. When the government tells us that we are in a depression, if they even do, it will be about 6 or 7 or 9 months since we've already been in one, just like it was with the recession that started at the end of 2007. So when we look at the differences with today and then, back then we had a fiat system that wasn't fiat. It was backed by gold and silver. Today it's fiat. So when we're making all of this money with the printing press and just by typing a bunch of numbers on a computer with a couple of PIN codes, I guess that is supposed to solve the problem. But back then, they actually deflated the money supply. So it was pretty much a complete difference. And we've seen a lot of extra cost today that never actually occurred. We have debt and interest just skyrocketing at massive levels. Credit cards charging 18, 20, even 30%, along with all of the other interest payments for just a mortgage, a line of credit. So many different amounts of ways of getting credit has caused a lot of debt and interest with money that just does not come from anywhere. Source on that is Zeitgeist, Addendum, and Movement. There is just no way that we can avoid debt with the way that the monetary system has been made, mathematically speaking. In the 1930s, the taxes were very small compared to today. They are nickel and diming us so big with so many different kind of taxes. Small businesses can't survive because of the taxes they incur. The expenses that they're forced to pay today compared to back then go up extremely high, that it's just a good reason for why so many companies are failing. Our houses, even inflation adjusted, cost more today than they did back then, which is a big reason we had the housing bubble. We have insurance costs on pretty much almost everything these days, and now we're seeing these insurance companies like AIG go broke, and the FDIC, which is needing a bailout. So that tells you right there, there's a heck of a lot of problems that we never had before. I'm only taking an educated guess that the food and energy that we use today, inflation adjusted, is worth more than it was back then. And we have so many just little nickel and dime costs as far as stuff as communications are concerned, with the phone, the internet. They even try to get us more with the televisions, the cable and satellite bills. There's just so much more. And if that wasn't enough, they try to make us buy a lot of junk that we don't need by trying to promote Christmas and birthdays and Easter gifts so that we could keep the consumer spending going. That didn't really happen back in the 1930s. And people were as brainwashed in the 1930s as they were today. Back then they had newspapers and radio and some print, but nothing like we are exposed to today. And I think it has affected a lot of people because they still come on today trying to put a lot of propaganda to economic recovery, which quite frankly is just not possible. Back in the 1930s, people actually ate pretty decent healthy food because the chickens that you would have traded for back in the 1930s most likely would have been free range. Gardens would not have had pesticide food. Now when you go to the grocery store, if you buy a nice full chicken, it most likely was not free range. If you buy your vegetables, it has a good chance of having pesticides because we have evolved to a day and age where we have big major companies with massive farms using these compared to the mom and pop shops, which actually have a better chance of a positive economy compared to all of these big chains and big like Walmarts and all of these big companies that are actually making it worse. People today are more dependent on fast food than they were today, And I think people were more tough back then as far as survival skills were concerned. So these were farmers back then, and a lot of people who were able to grow their gardens, to have their cattle, their chickens, or whatever they did to create their food. And it's what people are not able to do today. Maybe the brainwashing has something to do with it. I'm not too sure, but even the weather that's coming on is the biggest X factor, because there was no Mayan calendar ending back in the 1930s like there is today. So because we have the hurricanes and the tornadoes and flooding and all of these natural disasters at such grander levels and higher intensity frequencies, what's going to happen when Katrina happens again? And it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when and how many times and how much worse it's going to get. That, to me, is going to be massive problems, because in 2005, if they were not able to handle that situation on an economic level, how are they going to in 2010 and 2011 and 2012? It just doesn't seem feasible that it can. Like, they pretty much let New Orleans go down to dry, pretty much, but they'll definitely let it go to dry when a major hurricane comes into New Orleans again in 2011 or 2012 or 2010, and all of these other areas, because even if they were rescuing and giving aid to these certain areas, only the first few major tragedies are going to get some help, and then we're all out of resources. We can't do anything anymore. So that has been a big reason why it's going to be much more difficult. And even those who are trying to garden and raise farms, the weather effects is like a lottery ticket, or a whammy, if you will. If you hit the whammy, boom, you're done. If you don't hit the whammy, then you're going to be surviving. But one of the more positive things about today compared to the 30s is more people are waking up on the internet. So this is a huge positive, in my opinion. People see the corruption that is going on they were not able to see. So even though we are being brainwashed more and more, we are now being brainwashed by more positive stuff, thank God. So people, or not, hardly anyone was aware of the manipulation that was done in the 30s, so that the select few banks would prosper, the select few people in the higher end would prosper, while they just let the little banks fail. They're doing the same thing today. They're letting some of the banks fail, yet they're trying to make the elites on the cream of the crop be the ones that are doing the best. I'd have to guess Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan might be on the list. JP Morgan was on the list before. Whether they still are today, I guess time will only tell. But people are waking up to what's going on, and this time, compared to the 30s, the humanity, can actually do something to change it. We actually have information on the law of attraction. They didn't have the law of attraction information back then, and that is something that the powers that be are not able to take away from you. Peace and light, and have yourself a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.